The morning Sarah Montgomery discovered her husband had gambled away their land in a poker game, she stood on the porch of their homestead outside Abilene, Kansas, with nothing but rage burning through her veins and a forged signature on a deed that was not worth the paper it was printed on. It was the summer of 1878, and the heat rippled across the prairie grass like waves on an ocean, making the horizon shimmer and dance. Sarah was 24 years old, with dark auburn hair that she kept pinned back in a practical bun, and green eyes that had seen too much disappointment in her 5 years of marriage to Thomas Montgomery. She had built this life with her own 2 hands, planting crops, mending fences, raising chickens, and nursing livestock through harsh winters. The 160 acres had been her inheritance from her father, a gift he had given her on her deathbed 3 years prior, with the strict instruction that it remain in her name alone. Thomas had other ideas. He did what? Sarah's voice cracked as she faced the land agent, a weaselly man named Burton, who stood in her doorway with papers clutched in his sweaty palms. "Your husband sold the property to Mr. Cyrus Blackwell 2 nights ago, ma'am, fair and square. I have the deed right here with both signatures." Burton thrust the document toward her, but Sarah snatched it from his hands before he could properly present it. Her eyes scanned the page, taking in every detail. There, at the bottom, was Thomas's sprawling signature, and beside it, what was supposed to be her own name, but Sarah had never signed anything. The curves were wrong, the letters too hesitant. This was a forgery, plain as day. "I never signed this document," Sarah said, her voice steady now, cold as winter steel. "This is fraud." Burton shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting away from hers. "Now, ma'am, your husband assured us that he had your full consent. As his wife, the property naturally falls under his authority to manage and sell as he sees fit. The property was deeded to me by my father. My name alone is on the original papers. Thomas had no legal right to sell what was never his." Sarah's hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury so intense she thought she might strike the man where he stood. Burton backed toward the steps. "I suggest you take that up with your husband, Mrs. Montgomery. Mr. Blackwell takes possession in 3 days. You will need to vacate the premises by then." As Burton's horse kicked up dust on its way back toward town, Sarah stormed into the house. The interior was modest but clean, with whitewashed walls and simple furniture that she had helped build or bartered for over the years. Thomas sat at the kitchen table, a bottle of whiskey already half empty, though it was barely past noon. "You sold my land." It was not a question. Thomas did not look up. His face was blotchy and red, his eyes bloodshot. At 29, he already looked like an old man, worn down by his own weakness and poor choices. "I got us out of debt." "You got us into debt." Sarah slammed her hand on the table, making the bottle jump. "You gambled away every spare dollar we had, and now you have stolen my inheritance to pay for your sins?" "A man has rights over his wife's property," Thomas mumbled, taking another swig from the bottle. "Not this property. Never this property." Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough over Thomas Montgomery. "Where are the original deeds? The ones my father gave me?" Thomas's silence was answer enough. He had destroyed them or hidden them so thoroughly that she would never find them in time. Sarah turned on her heel and walked out of the house. She saddled her mare, a dappled gray named Juniper, and rode toward Abilene with her heart pounding in her chest. The town was bustling with activity as cattle drivers and railroad workers mingled with farmers and shopkeepers. Sarah tied Juniper outside the land office and pushed through the door with determination. The clerk behind the desk looked up with disinterest until he saw the expression on Sarah's face. "Ma'am, can I help you?" "I need to see the original deed for the Montgomery property, the one registered in 1875 under Sarah Daniels before my marriage." The clerk hesitated. "That would be in the archives. It will take some time to retrieve." "I will wait." Sarah spent the next 2 hours pacing the small office while the clerk disappeared into a back room filled with file cabinets and dusty ledgers. When he finally emerged, he was empty-handed. "I am sorry, ma'am. It appears that document has been removed from our files. There is no record of it. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Without the original deed proving her sole ownership, she had no legal standing to contest the sale. Thomas, or more likely Cyrus Blackwell, had been thorough in covering their tracks. She stumbled out of the office and stood on the wooden sidewalk trying to gather her thoughts. The sun beat down mercilessly and sweat trickled down her spine beneath her cotton dress. She needed help, but she did not know where to turn. Her family was gone. Her friends were few, and the law seemed determined to side with men who saw women as property to be managed rather than people with rights. You look like someone kicked your dog and burned your house down in the same afternoon. Sarah turned to find a man leaning against the post beside her, his hat tilted back to reveal a sun-bronzed face and eyes the color of a summer sky. He was tall and lean, dressed in worn denim and a dusty shirt with a red bandana tied around his neck. A cowboy, clearly, though something in his bearing suggested he was more than just a ranch hand. "Worse than that," Sarah said before she could stop herself. "Someone stole my land." The cowboy straightened, his expression shifting from casual interest to sharp attention. "That is a serious accusation. It is a serious crime." Sarah found herself explaining the entire situation to this stranger, words tumbling out in a rush. There was something about his steady gaze that made her feel heard, truly heard, for the first time in years. When she finished, the cowboy extended his hand. "Name is Cole Bridger. I have been working cattle drives from Texas up through Kansas for the past 6 years, but I know a thing or two about land disputes and crooked dealings, seen enough of them to know when someone is getting cheated." Sarah shook his hand, feeling the calluses and strength in his grip. "Sarah Montgomery, though I'm beginning to wish I'd never taken that last name." Cole's jaw tightened. A man who would steal from his own wife is no man at all. "Now you said the buyer is Cyrus Blackwell?" "Yes. Do you know him?" "I know of him. He is a land speculator who has been buying up properties all around Abilene, trying to control the railroad access. He is not well liked, but he has money and influence." Cole paused, his eyes narrowing in thought. "But if the sale was fraudulent, there are ways to challenge it. You just need proof." "The original deed is missing from the land office," Sarah said, feeling despair creep back into her voice. "Then we will find another way." Cole pushed away from the post and gestured down the street. "Come on. I know someone who might be able to help." Sarah hesitated for only a moment before falling into step beside him. What choice did she have? She was running out of time, and this stranger was offering her hope when everyone else had offered her nothing but closed doors and legal technicalities. Cole led her to a small law office tucked between a saloon and a general store. The sign above the door read, "James Hartwell, Attorney at Law." Inside, a middle-aged man with graying temples and spectacles perched on his nose looked up from a mountain of papers. "Cole Bridger. I should have known trouble would walk through my door today." Despite the words, Hartwell's tone was warm, even amused. Not trouble, justice. Cole introduced Sarah and quickly outlined her situation. Hartwell listened carefully, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When Cole finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair. "You are correct that the sale is fraudulent if Mrs. Montgomery never signed the deed and if the property was held in her name alone. However, without the original documentation, proving that will be difficult." "But not impossible?" Sarah leaned forward, desperate. "Not impossible," Hartwell agreed. "When was the original deed registered?" "August 1875. My father registered it at the county courthouse, not just the local land office." Hartwell's eyes lit up. "The county courthouse in Dickinson County. They keep duplicate records. If we can get a certified copy of that original deed, we can prove the property was yours alone, which means your husband had no authority to sell it without your genuine consent." "How long would that take?" Cole asked. "A day to ride to the courthouse, a day to search the records and get the certification, a day to ride back, 3 days if we are lucky." I have 3 days before Blackwell takes possession, Sarah said. It will be cutting it close. Then we better ride fast. Cole was already moving toward the door. Hartwell stood as well. I will draft a temporary injunction to present to Judge Morrison. It might buy you an extra day or two if needed. But Cole, you need to get that deed. Without it, Mrs. Montgomery has no case. Sarah followed Cole back into the street, her mind reeling. You would do this for me? You do not even know me. Cole stopped and turned to face her, his expression serious. I know enough. I know you are being wronged, and I know I can help. That is all I need to know. He paused, then added more softly. Besides, I lost my own family's ranch when I was younger. Lost it to men who used legal tricks and intimidation to steal what was not theirs. I could not stop them then. Maybe I can stop them now. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that went deeper than words. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. When do we leave? She asked. We? Cole raised an eyebrow. It is my land, my fight. I am coming with you. Cole studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but we ride hard and we do not stop except to rest the horses. Can you handle that? I grew up on the frontier, Mr. Bridger. I can handle anything. A slow smile spread across Cole's face. I believe you can, Mrs. Montgomery. I believe you can. They spent the next hour preparing for the journey. Sarah returned home to pack supplies and change into more practical riding clothes. Thomas was passed out at the table, and she did not bother to wake him or explain where she was going. She stuffed a saddlebag with jerky, hardtack, a canteen, and a change of clothes. She also retrieved her father's old pistol from the trunk at the foot of her bed, checking to make sure it was loaded. When she met Cole at the edge of town, he had 2 horses ready, his own sturdy buckskin gelding and a fresh roan mare he had borrowed from a friend. Juniper will need rest after the ride in, he explained. You can pick her up when we get back. They rode east toward Dickinson County as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The prairie stretched out endlessly around them, golden grass swaying in the hot breeze. They did not talk much at first, both lost in their own thoughts. But as the miles passed, Sarah found herself curious about the man who had so quickly come to her aid. You said you lost your family's ranch, she ventured, as they let the horses walk through a shallow creek. What happened? Cole was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he would not answer. Then he began to speak, his voice low and measured. My father was a rancher down in Texas. Good man, hard worker, but he was not good with papers and legal matters. When a railroad company wanted to run tracks through our land, they offered him what seemed like a fair price. He refused because that land had been in our family for 2 generations, so they found another way. He paused to let his horse drink, then continued. They claimed he had never properly filed his land grant, that the property was actually public domain, brought in lawyers and judges who were in their pocket. My father fought them for 2 years, spent every penny we had on legal fees. In the end, they took the ranch anyway. My father died 6 months later. I think it was a broken heart more than anything else. I am so sorry, Sarah said softly. Cole shrugged, but she could see the old pain in his eyes. It taught me that sometimes the law is not about justice. It is about who has the most money and the best connections. But it also taught me that there are still good people out there, people like James Hartwell, who will fight for what is right even when it is not profitable. Is that why you became a cowboy instead of a rancher? I did not have the heart to start over, to build something just to watch it get taken away again. Driving cattle, moving from place to place, it is simpler. No attachments, no one depending on me, no one who can take anything from me because I do not have anything to take. He glanced at her. Or I did not, until today. Sarah felt her breath catch at the implication in his words, but she did not press him on it. Instead, they rode on as the sky turned from blue to pink to deep purple. When darkness fell, Cole led them to a sheltered spot beneath a copse of cottonwood trees near another creek. They made camp quickly and efficiently, both of them familiar with the rhythms of frontier life. Cole built a small fire while Sarah tended to the horses, making sure they were watered and hobbled for the night. They ate a simple meal of jerky and hardtack, washing it down with water from the creek. "We will need to leave before dawn, Ormy," Cole said as they sat by the fire. "If we push hard, we can reach the courthouse by mid-afternoon tomorrow." Sarah nodded, watching the flames dance and crackle. She should have been exhausted, but her mind was too full of worry and anger to rest. What if we cannot find the deed? What if it is gone like the one at the land office? "Then we will find another way," Cole said firmly. "We do not give up until we have tried everything." "Why are you so determined to help me?" Sarah turned to look at him across the fire. "You could have just offered sympathy and gone on your way. Instead, you are risking your time and effort for a stranger." Cole poked at the fire with a stick, sending up a shower of sparks. "Maybe I'm tired of seeing good people get crushed by bad ones, or maybe I see something in you that reminds me of my mother. She was strong like you, did not take nonsense from anyone. She would have fought tooth and nail to keep our land if my father had let her handle the legal matters." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "Or maybe I just think you deserve better than a husband who would steal from you in a system that treats you like you do not matter." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes again, but this time she let one or two fall. "I thought I was doing the right thing when I married Thomas. He seemed kind, hardworking. But he changed after we married, or maybe I just finally saw who he really was. The drinking, the gambling, the anger. I stayed because I did not know where else to go, because I thought maybe I could fix him or fix our marriage. But you cannot fix someone who does not want to be fixed." "No, you cannot," Cole agreed quietly, "and you should not have to." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, the fire burning low. Finally, Sarah stood and spread out her bedroll on the far side of the camp. Cole did the same, positioning himself between her and the open prairie, a protective gesture that Sarah found both touching and reassuring. As she lay staring up at the stars scattered across the vast Kansas sky, Sarah thought about the strange turn her life had taken in just one day. This morning she had been a woman trapped in a bad marriage, watching her dreams crumble around her. Tonight she was on an adventure with a cowboy who seemed to believe in her more than her own husband ever had. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She woke before dawn to find Cole already up, rolling his bedroll and saddling the horses. They ate a quick breakfast of leftover hardtack and were on the trail as the first light of morning painted the eastern horizon gold and crimson. The day was long and hot, and the sun beating down on them without mercy as they rode across the rolling prairie. They stopped only to water the horses and stretch their legs for a few minutes before mounting up again. Sarah's back ached, and her legs were sore, but she gritted her teeth and kept pace with Cole. She would not slow them down, would not give him any reason to regret bringing her along. As the afternoon wore on, they began to see signs of civilization. Farms and homesteads, a small town in the distance, and finally the larger settlement that housed the county courthouse. It was a 2-story brick building that dominated the town square, impressive and imposing with its white columns and wide steps. Cole and Sarah dismounted, tying their horses to the hitching post outside. They were dusty and trail-worn, but there was no time to worry about appearances. Sarah climbed the steps with her heart pounding, Cole close behind her. Inside, the courthouse was cool and dim, a relief after the blazing sun. A clerk sat at a desk in the main hallway, sorting through papers with a bored expression. "We need to access land records from 1875, Sarah said without preamble, specifically a deed registered in August of that year under the name Sarah Daniels." The clerk looked up, taking in their disheveled appearance with barely concealed disdain. "The records office closes at 5 o'clock. You have about 30 minutes. "Then we better hurry," Cole said, his tone making it clear they were not going to be turned away. The clerk sighed and led them down a hallway to a large room filled with filing cabinets and shelves stacked with ledgers. "August 1875 would be in that cabinet over there," he said, pointing to the far corner. "You will need to sign in and out, And you cannot remove any documents from this room. We need a certified copy, Sarah said. That will cost you $2 and take about 20 minutes to prepare once you find the document. Sarah pulled the money from her pocket, money she had been saving secretly from Thomas for months. Here, we will find it. The clerk took the money and left them alone. Sarah and Cole immediately went to the indicated cabinet, pulling open drawers and flipping through files. The deeds were organized by date and then alphabetically by name. Sarah's hands trembled as she searched through the August entries, her eyes scanning each name. Here, she breathed, pulling out a yellow document. This is it. She unfolded the deed carefully, reading the familiar words that her father had insisted she memorize when he first gave her the land. 160 acres granted to Sarah Daniels, with full rights and privileges thereof. Her father's signature was at the bottom, along with the county clerk's seal and signature from 1875. Thank God, Sarah whispered, clutching the paper to her chest. Cole squeezed her shoulder gently. Let us get that certified copy. They brought the deed to the clerk, who examined it and then took it to another room to make the official copy. Sarah paced the hallway, unable to stand still. Every minute felt like an hour. Finally, the clerk returned with the certified copy, complete with a fresh seal and signature. This document certifies that the attached copy is a true and accurate reproduction of the original deed on file with Dickinson County, the clerk intoned in a bored voice. Sarah took the papers with shaking hands. Thank you. They practically ran out of the courthouse, their exhaustion forgotten in the rush of relief and triumph. But as they reached their horses, Cole grabbed Sarah's arm. We are not done yet. We still have to get back to Abilene and file this with the court before Blackwell takes possession. Then we ride through the night if we have to, Sarah said fiercely. Cole nodded, but she could see the concern in his eyes. Riding through the night was dangerous, both for them and for the horses. But what choice did they have? They set out as the sun began to set, pushing the horses as hard as they dared. When darkness fell, Cole kept them to the main trail, navigating by the stars and the faint light of a quarter moon. They rode for hours, stopping only twice to let the horses rest briefly. It was near midnight when they heard the sound of other horses on the trail behind them. Cole pulled up, his hand going to the rifle strapped to his saddle. Someone is following us. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine despite the warm night air. Do you think it is Blackwell's men? Could be, or could be outlaws. Either way, we cannot afford to find out. He looked around, then pointed to a cluster of rocks off the trail. There, we can take cover and see who it is. They guided their horses into the rocks and dismounted, crouching low. Sarah pulled out her pistol, checking again that it was loaded. Her heart hammered in her chest as the sound of hoofbeats grew louder. 3 riders appeared on the trail, moving fast. As they passed, Sarah caught a glimpse of their faces in the moonlight. She did not recognize any of them, but they had the hard, ruthless look of hired guns. Keep going, one of them said, his voice carrying in the still night air. Blackwell wants that woman stopped before she can file any papers. Check the road to Abilene. The riders galloped past, disappearing into the darkness. Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. They are looking for us. Which means Blackwell knows what we are doing. Someone must have sent him word from the courthouse. Cole's jaw was set in a grim line. We cannot take the main trail. They will be watching it. Is there another way? There is a cattle trail that runs parallel to the main road about a mile south of here. It will take us longer, but it is less likely to be watched. Cole stood and helped Sarah to her feet. We will have to be careful. The terrain is rougher. They mounted up again and Cole led them south across the open prairie. The cattle trail was barely visible in the darkness, more of a suggestion than an actual path, but Cole seemed to know where he was going. Sarah trusted him completely, though she barely knew why. Perhaps it was the way he had stood up for her without hesitation, or the way he spoke to her like she was an equal rather than someone to be managed. Or perhaps it was something deeper, something she was not quite ready to name. They rode through the remainder of the night, always listening for signs of pursuit. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Sarah could see the outskirts of Abilene in the distance. Relief flooded through her, but Cole remained tense. We are not safe yet. Blackwell will have men in town too. They approached Abilene from the south, avoiding the main streets. Cole led them to the back of James Hartwell's office, where they dismounted and tied the horses. Cole knocked on the rear door, a coded pattern of raps that made Sarah wonder just how well he knew the lawyer. Hartwell opened the door, still in his nightshirt, but with his spectacles already perched on his nose. Thank God. I was beginning to worry. Did you get it? Sarah handed him the certified copy of the deed. Hartwell's face broke into a wide smile as he examined it. This is perfect. Exactly what we need. Come inside quickly. They followed him into the office where Hartwell lit several lamps and began pulling out papers. I filed the temporary injunction yesterday, but Judge Morrison was reluctant to grant it without evidence. This changes everything. With this deed proving the property was solely yours before your marriage, your husband had no legal authority to sell it. The sale is void. But Blackwell will not give up easily, Cole said. No, he will not, Hartwell agreed, which is why we need to get to the courthouse as soon as it opens and file this officially. Once it is on record, Blackwell will have no legal claim no matter how many judges he has in his pocket. The courthouse opens at 8 o'clock, Sarah said, glancing at the clock on the wall. It was just past 6. Then we have 2 hours to prepare our case. Hartwell was already scribbling notes on a legal pad. Mrs. Montgomery, I will need you to swear out an affidavit stating that you never signed the bill of sale and that the signature on that document is a forgery. Sarah sat at the desk and began writing out her statement, her hand steady despite her exhaustion. Cole stood by the window watching the street, his body tense and ready for trouble. At 7:30, they heard a commotion outside. Cole pulled back the curtain slightly, then swore under his breath. Blackwell is here, and he brought friends. Sarah looked over his shoulder to see a portly man in an expensive suit standing in the street with 4 rough-looking men flanking him. Cyrus Blackwell had a florid face and cold, calculating eyes. He was pointing at Hartwell's office and speaking to his men. They know we are here, Sarah said. Let them know, Hartwell said calmly, gathering up all their papers and stuffing them into a leather satchel. We have the law on our side now. All we have to do is get to the courthouse and file these documents. And how do you propose we do that with 4 armed men blocking the street? Cole asked. Through the front door, like civilized people. Hartwell straightened his tie and put on his jacket. They would not dare start trouble in broad daylight in the middle of town. We walk out there with our heads high and we go straight to the courthouse. Sarah admired the lawyer's confidence, even if she did not entirely share it. But he was right. They had come too far to hide now. The 3 of them walked out the front door of the office and onto the wooden sidewalk. Immediately, Blackwell stepped forward, his men spreading out behind him. Mrs. Montgomery, Blackwell said, his voice oily and false. I understand there has been some confusion about the sale of your property. I assure you everything was conducted legally and above board. You assure me? Sarah's voice was sharp enough to cut. You bought stolen property, Mr. Blackwell. My husband forged my signature on that deed. The sale is fraudulent. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. That is a serious accusation. Do you have proof? We do. Hartwell held up his satchel, and we are about to file it with the court. I would not do that if I were you, one of Blackwell's men said, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. Cole stepped forward, placing himself between Sarah and the gunman. Are you threatening an officer of the court and his clients in the middle of town? Because that would be a real poor decision. The street had gone quiet, townspeople stopping to watch the confrontation. Sarah could see faces in windows, people gathering on the sidewalks. Whatever happened next would have witnesses, and Blackwell knew it. Blackwell held up a hand, stopping his man from drawing his weapon. There is no need for threats or violence. I am a businessman, not a thug. Mrs. Montgomery, I paid good money for that land. If there was indeed some irregularity with the sale, I am willing to discuss compensation. I do not want your compensation, Sarah said coldly. I want my land back. Then we have nothing to discuss. Blackwell's pleasant mask slipped, revealing the ruthless man beneath. I will see you in court, Mrs. Montgomery, and I assure you, I have the best lawyers money can buy. Then they will have their work cut out for them, Maria, Hartwell said. Good day, Mr. Blackwell. They walked past Blackwell and his men, Sarah's heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Every step felt like an eternity, but no one stopped them. They crossed the street and climbed the steps of the courthouse, not looking back until they were safely inside. The next 2 hours were a blur of paperwork and legal proceedings. Hartwell filed Sarah's certified deed along with her affidavit. Judge Morrison, a stern man with a reputation for fairness, reviewed the documents carefully. Blackwell arrived with his lawyers, as promised, but their arguments fell apart in the face of the certified deed. The evidence is clear, Judge Morrison finally declared. The property in question was solely owned by Sarah Daniels prior to her marriage, and no legal transfer of ownership occurred after her marriage to Thomas Montgomery. The attempted sale of said property without Mrs. Montgomery's genuine consent is therefore null and void. The deed is returned to Mrs. Montgomery, and Mr. Blackwell's claim is dismissed. Sarah felt tears of relief stream down her face. Cole put a steadying hand on her back and she leaned into his solid presence. It was over. She had won. But as they left the courthouse, Sarah realized that winning back her land was only the first step. She still had to deal with Thomas, and she still had to decide what to do with the rest of her life. Thomas was waiting at the house when Sarah returned, Cole riding beside her. Her husband looked smaller somehow, diminished by his own actions. When he saw Cole, his face twisted with anger and something else, something that looked like fear. "Who is this?" Thomas demanded. "Someone who helped me get back what you stole," Sarah said, dismounting. "The land is mine again, Thomas. The court ruled the sale fraudulent." Thomas's face went from red to pale in an instant. "You went to court? You made me look like a fool in front of the whole town?" "You made yourself look like a fool." Sarah walked past him into the house, with Cole following close behind. She began gathering her things, the few possessions that were truly hers. "What are you doing?" Thomas asked, a note of panic entering his voice. "I am leaving." Sarah's voice was calm, final. "I am filing for divorce on the grounds of fraud and abandonment of marital duties. Mr. Hartwell is drawing up the papers. You will have 30 days to vacate my property." "Your property? I am your husband. What is yours is mine." "Not anymore." Sarah turned to face him. "You forged my name, Thomas. You tried to steal my inheritance. You are lucky I am not pressing criminal charges, but I am done. I am done with the drinking, the gambling, the lies. I am done pretending that this marriage is anything other than a mistake." Thomas looked like he might argue, might rage, but then his shoulders slumped. Deep down he knew she was right. He had destroyed whatever they might have had, and there was no coming back from that. "Where will I go?" he asked quietly. "I do not know, and I do not care." Sarah's voice was not cruel, just tired. "But you have 30 days to figure it out." Thomas grabbed a few things and left without another word. Sarah watched him ride away, feeling nothing but a vast sense of relief. She should have done this years ago, should have stood up for herself before things got so bad. But regret was useless. All she could do was move forward. Cole had waited outside, giving her privacy for the confrontation. Now he stood by the corral, looking out over the land that Sarah had fought so hard to keep. She walked over to join him, suddenly unsure of what to say. They had spent the last 2 days in constant motion, focused on a single goal. Now that goal was achieved, and she did not know what came next. "Thank you," she said finally. "I could not have done any of this without you." Cole turned to look at her, his blue eyes soft in the fading light of evening. "You are stronger than you know, Sarah. You would have found a way." "Maybe, but I'm glad I did not have to do it alone." She paused, then added, "What will you do now? Go back to driving cattle?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. I have been thinking about that. I have been drifting for 6 years, never staying in one place, never putting down roots. I thought that was what I wanted, what I needed after losing my family's ranch. But these past few days with you fighting for something that matters, it made me remember what it feels like to have a purpose, to have something worth protecting. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. What are you saying? I am saying that I do not want to drift anymore. Cole took a step closer to her. I am saying that somewhere between Abilene and that courthouse in Dickinson County, I started to care about you, Sarah, not just about your land or your fight, but about you, the way you stand up for yourself, the way you do not let anyone push you around, the way you look at the world like it is full of possibilities instead of limitations. He reached out and gently touched her face. I know it is too soon. I know you just left your husband, and you probably do not want to hear this, but I have to say it. I am falling in love with you. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. It is not too soon, she whispered. I felt it too out there on the trail, the way you believed in me, the way you fought for me without asking for anything in return. You made me feel like I mattered, like I was worth something. I've not felt that way in so long. Cole cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You are worth everything, Sarah. You are brave and smart and beautiful, and any man would be lucky to stand beside you. Then stand beside me, Sarah said, her voice trembling. Stay here. Help me work this land. Help me build the life I always dreamed of having. Are you sure people will talk? You are still married even if you're filing for divorce. Let them talk. Sarah put her hands over his, holding them against her face. I have spent too long caring about what other people think, living my life according to other people's rules. I am done with that. I want to live for myself now, and I want you to be part of that life. Cole smiled, a slow, warm smile that made Sarah's heart sing. Then he leaned down and kissed her, soft and gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. It was a kiss full of promise and possibility, a kiss that spoke of new beginnings and second chances. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. Cole rested his forehead against hers. I will stay as long as you want me here. Then you better get comfortable, Sarah said, laughing through her tears, because I plan on keeping you for a very long time. Over the following weeks, Cole proved to be as good as his word. He moved into the small bunkhouse on the property, maintaining propriety while Sarah's divorce proceedings moved forward. But every day they worked side by side, repairing fences, tending crops, caring for livestock. Cole had a knack for ranching that came from his upbringing in Texas, and under his guidance, the homestead began to thrive in ways it never had under Thomas's neglectful management. The townspeople did talk, of course. Some disapproved of Sarah taking up with another man before her divorce was finalized, but many more admired her courage in standing up to both her husband and Cyrus Blackwell. Women especially began to seek her out, asking her advice about their own legal rights and property issues. Sarah found herself becoming an advocate for other women in situations similar to what she had faced. James Hartwell remained a good friend and ally, helping Sarah navigate the divorce proceedings. Thomas did not contest the divorce, perhaps because he knew he had no ground to stand on. In October of 1878, 3 months after Sarah first discovered the fraudulent sale, the divorce was finalized. Sarah Daniels Montgomery became Sarah Daniels once again, free and clear of the man who had tried to ruin her. On a crisp autumn morning with the leaves turning gold and red across the prairie, Cole found Sarah in the garden, harvesting the last of the summer vegetables. He knelt down beside her, his hat in his hands. Sarah Daniels, you see him, sayers, he said, his voice serious, but his eyes warm. I know we have only known each other a few months, but they have been the best months of my life. You have given me a home, a purpose, a reason to believe in the future again. I love you more than I ever thought possible to love another person. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. I know you have been married before and maybe you do not want to do it again, But if you will have me, I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life making you happy, supporting your dreams and standing beside you as an equal partner. Will you marry me?" Sarah looked at the ring, then at Cole's hopeful face. Her heart swelled with love and joy. This was not like the first time she had been proposed to, when she'd been young and naive and dazzled by pretty words. This was real, built on mutual respect and shared experiences and genuine affection. "Yes," she said, throwing her arms around his neck. "Yes, Cole Bridger, I will marry you." They were married in November in a simple ceremony at the courthouse, with James Hartwell serving as witness. Sarah wore a new dress she had sewn herself, pale blue cotton with lace at the collar. Cole wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back, and his boots polished to a shine. They spoke their vows with sincerity and joy, promising to love and honor each other as equals. The wedding night was spent in the farmhouse, which Cole had spent weeks renovating and improving. He had added new rooms, fixed the roof, and even installed glass windows to replace the oiled paper that had covered the openings. It was a true home now, a place built with love and care. As Sarah lay in Cole's arms that night, listening to the wind whisper across the prairie, she marveled at how much her life had changed in such a short time. 6 months ago, she had been trapped in a miserable marriage, watching her dreams crumble. Now she was free, loved, and looking toward a future filled with possibility. "What are you thinking about in Crew? Cole murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "About how lucky I am," Sarah said. "About how one terrible thing led to the best thing that ever happened to me." "You mean me?" Cole's tone was teasing. "I mean us. This life we are building together." Sarah turned to face him in the darkness. "I never knew marriage could be like this, a partnership instead of ownership. You treat me like I matter, like my opinions and dreams are just as important as yours." "They are just as important," Cole said seriously. "More important, maybe, because you are smarter than me." Sarah laughed and swatted his chest. "You are plenty smart. You figured out how to get my land back when I thought all was lost." "We figured it out together here," Cole corrected. "That is how it is going to be from now on, partners in everything." The winter of 1878 was harsh, with snow piling high around the farmhouse and temperatures dropping well below freezing. But inside, Sarah and Cole stayed warm, spending long evenings by the fire, planning for the spring planting and dreaming about the future. They talked about expanding the ranch, maybe buying some cattle to go along with the crops. Cole had contacts from his cowboy days, people who could help them get started in the cattle business. When spring came, they put their plans into action. Cole took some of their savings and traveled to Texas to buy a small herd of longhorns. While he was gone, Sarah missed him terribly, but kept herself busy preparing the ranch for the cattle's arrival. She hired 2 ranch hands, young men who needed work and were willing to learn. Cole returned in April with 20 head of cattle and a grin that stretched from ear to ear. "This is just the beginning," he told Sarah as they watched the cattle settle into their new pasture. "In a few years, we will have the biggest ranch in this part of Kansas." But even more exciting than the cattle was the news Sarah had been waiting to share with him. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. Cole's eyes went wide, then filled with tears. "Truly?" "Truly. The baby should come in late October or early November." Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I am going to be a father," he whispered, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a family." "Are you happy?" Sarah asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Cole said. "You have given me everything I thought I lost when my family's ranch was taken. A home, a purpose, and now a child. I do not deserve you, Sarah Bridger." "Yes, you do," Sarah said firmly. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Cole, and I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." The pregnancy was not easy. Sarah continued to work the ranch as long as she could, but the summer heat made her dizzy and nauseous. Cole hovered over her constantly, worried that she was pushing herself too hard. But Sarah was strong and stubborn, refusing to spend 9 months in bed just because she was carrying a child. In late October, with the leaves falling and the first frost threatening, Sarah went into labor. Cole rode like mad to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson who had delivered half the babies in the county. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Cole paced outside the bedroom, unable to sit still, jumping at every sound. Finally, as the sun rose on a new day, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy with a shock of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. When Mrs. Henderson placed the baby in Cole's arms, he wept openly, staring down at his son with a mixture of awe and terror. "He is so small," Cole whispered. "He will grow," Sarah said from the bed, exhausted but radiantly happy. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, but now, looking at the tiny person they had created, Cole knew exactly what he wanted to call him. "Daniel, after your father, if that is all right with you." Sarah felt tears stream down her face. "That is perfect. Daniel Bridger. My father would have loved that." Little Daniel proved to be a spirited child, always curious and always getting into trouble. As he grew, he toddled after his father around the ranch, mimicking Cole's walk and trying to help with chores far beyond his toddler capabilities. Sarah watched them together and felt her heart overflow with love. The ranch prospered over the next few years. Word spread about the quality of their cattle, and buyers came from as far away as Kansas City to purchase stock. Sarah and Cole hired more hands, built a larger barn, and expanded their grazing land by purchasing adjacent properties that came up for sale. They were careful and fair in their dealings, never resorting to the kind of underhanded tactics that had been used against them. In 1881, Sarah gave birth to twin daughters, Emily and Grace, both with their mother's auburn hair and their father's blue eyes. The house was suddenly full of noise and laughter, with children running through the rooms and toys scattered across every surface. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. One evening in the summer of 1883, after the children were finally asleep, Sarah and Cole sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance across the darkening prairie. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful. In the 5 years since they had first met, they had built something remarkable together, not just a successful business, but a true home, a true family. "Do you ever think about that day?" Sarah asked. "The day you found me standing outside the land office looking like someone kicked my dog?" Cole laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "I think about it all the time. Best day of my life, even though I did not know it at the time." "I was so angry," Sarah remembered. "So scared and angry and lost. I thought my life was over." "It was not over," Cole said, taking her hand. "It was just beginning." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, content. "I used to think that having my land stolen was the worst thing that could have happened to me. But if it had not happened, I never would have met you. I never would have had the courage to leave Thomas. I never would have realized how strong I could be." "You always had that strength," Cole said. "You just needed the right circumstances to show it to you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the night. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. One of the horses whinnied softly in the barn. Inside the house, one of the twins cried out briefly in sleep, then settled again. "Do you have any regrets?" Sarah asked suddenly. Cole thought about it seriously before answering. "Not a one. Every choice I made, every turn in the road led me here to you. How could I regret any of that?" "Even giving up the cowboy life, the freedom of the trail?" "I traded one kind of freedom for another," Cole said. "The freedom to drift and never belong to anyone was lonely. This, what we have here, this is true freedom. The freedom to love and be loved, to build something that will outlast us, to know that I matter to someone and they matter to me." He turned to look at her in the fading light. I would not trade this for anything in the world, Sarah. Not for anything. Sarah kissed him softly. Good, because you are stuck with me now. Best stuck I have ever been, Cole said with a grin. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow and thrive. Daniel grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. The twins were smart and spirited, keeping everyone on their toes with their antics and questions. In 1885, Sarah gave birth to another son, whom they named James after the lawyer who had helped save Sarah's land all those years ago. The children grew up hearing the story of how their parents met, how their mother had fought to keep her land, and how their father had helped her win it back. It became a family legend, passed down as a reminder that courage and determination could overcome even the most difficult obstacles. Sarah never forgot the lesson she learned during that terrible and wonderful summer of 1878. She became a voice for other women in the community who faced similar struggles, helping them understand their legal rights and connecting them with resources. Cole supported her advocacy work fully, even taking on more ranch duties so she could dedicate time to helping others. In 1890, Sarah and Cole celebrated their 12th wedding anniversary by taking a trip to Texas to visit the land where Cole had grown up. The old ranch was now owned by someone else, but Cole wanted to show Sarah where he came from, to share that part of his history with her. They stood on the prairie where his childhood home had once stood, and Cole talked about his parents and the dreams they had for their land. I used to be so angry about losing this place, Cole admitted. I thought it meant that everything my parents worked for was for nothing. It was not for nothing, Sarah said. Their hard work and values lived on in you. You took what they taught you and built something new, something even better. They would be so proud of you, Cole. Cole put his arm around her waist, pulling her close. They would be proud of us, of what we built together. As they rode back toward Kansas, Sarah reflected on how far they had both come. Two broken people, scarred by loss and betrayal, had found each other at exactly the right moment. Together they had healed old wounds and created something beautiful and lasting. By the turn of the century, the Bridger Ranch was one of the most successful operations in Kansas. Daniel had taken on more responsibilities, managing much of the day-to-day operations. The twins were in their late teens, beautiful and confident young women who showed every sign of being as strong and independent as their mother. Young James, at 15, was already showing a talent for business and numbers that suggested he might one day expand the ranch's operations even further. On a warm spring evening in 1901, Sarah and Cole celebrated their 23rd wedding anniversary with their children and grandchildren gathered around them. Daniel had married a school teacher named Anna, and they had given Sarah and Cole 3 grandchildren who were the light of their lives. As Sarah looked around the table at the family she and Cole had built together, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. The land that her father had given her, the land she had fought so hard to keep, had been the foundation for all of this. But it was Cole who had truly made it home. After dinner, Cole led Sarah outside to the porch where they had spent so many evenings over the years. The sun was setting in a blaze of orange and purple, painting the prairie in shades of fire. I have been thinking, Cole said, about that day we met, about how unlikely it all was. If Thomas had not stolen your land, if I had not been in town that particular day, if you had not been brave enough to accept help from a stranger. It was not unlikely, Sarah said softly. It was meant to be. All of it. The good and the bad, the struggles and the triumphs. It all led us here, to this moment, to this life. Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her the way he had held her 1,000 times before, with tenderness and strength. I love you, Sarah Bridger. I loved you from the moment you stood up to Burton and refused to be pushed around. I loved you when you insisted on riding with me to the courthouse. I loved you when you faced down Blackwell in the middle of town. And I love you now more than ever because you have shown me what it means to build a life with someone, to be true partners in every sense of the word. I love you too, Sarah whispered. You saved me. You, Cole. Not just my land, but me. You helped me remember who I was and what I was capable of. You gave me a reason to fight, and then you stood beside me for every battle that came after." They stood together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had found each other in the midst of chaos and built something extraordinary from the ruins of their past hurts. The land stretched out around them, fertile and prosperous, a testament to their hard work and shared vision. Inside the house, they could hear the laughter of their children and grandchildren, the sounds of a family bound by love and mutual respect. This was the legacy that Sarah and Cole would leave behind, not just land and cattle and money, but the knowledge that two people working together could overcome any obstacle, that love and determination were more powerful than any crooked deal or forged signature. As they finally turned to go inside, Cole took Sarah's hand, intertwining their fingers the way he always did. "You know what the best part of this whole story is?" he asked. "What is that?" "It is not over yet. We still have more chapters to write, more adventures to have, more grandchildren to spoil." Cole grinned at her. "We are just getting started, Mrs. Bridger." Sarah laughed, the sound full of joy and contentment. "Then let us make them good chapters, Mr. Bridger. Let us make them count." And they did. For many more years, Sarah and Cole worked side by side, watched their children grow and their grandchildren thrive. They never forgot the lessons they learned in the summer of 1878, when a cowboy helped a desperate woman reclaim what was rightfully hers and found love in the process. Their story became part of the local folklore, a reminder that justice and love could prevail even in the hardest circumstances. When Sarah passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1920 at the age of 66, Cole held her hand and thanked her for the 42 years they had shared together. He followed her 3 years later, and they were buried side by side on the land they had loved and fought for, their headstones simple, but their legacy profound. The ranch continued to be run by their descendants, who kept alive the values that Sarah and Cole had instilled in them: hard work, integrity, partnership, and the understanding that true strength comes from standing together. The land that Sarah's father had given her, the land that had nearly been stolen from her, remained in the family for generations, a living reminder that some things are worth fighting for, and that the right partner can make all the difference between defeat and victory, between despair and hope, between mere survival and a life truly lived.